If you're a fan of cartoons and TV shows, you probably know what a pilot episode is. For those who are uneducated, a pilot episode is something the team of a up-and-coming show pitches to a network to show a general episode of the show would look like. If it gets greenlit, it gets torn to a show, and when it doesn't, well, good luck trying to find your career now. But sometimes, pilot episodes don't get to see the light of day. So some pilot episodes do get released online by the companies or as a bonus feature in a DVD. But there are other times where they just never released at all and are completely gone forever and forgotten about. That topic is very popular in the lost media community. But what if I tell you that there is one pilot episode that went horribly wrong, and it's better that it doesn't get to see the light of day ever. What pilot episode of this show I'm talking about? Well, as you will see, it's about the magic school bus, and not in the way that you may think it is. So, take a seat and listen. The story called Magic School Bus Pilot Episode. Don't worry about who I am. If you really want to know about me, just know that I'm listening a lot by posting this. If you had a childhood, regardless of where you were born, you should remember the cartoon show The Magic School Bus. It was a children's cartoon show in the 90s where a crazy science teacher will take students on weekly adventures into places such as into space or through the human digestive system. It was a rather harmless and educational show, which is the reason why it's been so home to children since its premiere. What most people don't know about the show, however, was that it was meant to fit into a line of horror stories for kids and a show that ultimately never got made, titled Horror is Alive. The show, much like the Goosebumps television show, were about harmless horror stories, with 3 being shown in one episode. Despite this, the first episode underwent a complete overhaul during its production. What was meant to be the opening short was extended to a full episode length after the writer and the director of the episode went through a long and hard experiences with illegal substances, which inspired the middle and end of the short, which by no coincidence is where the short takes a drastic turn. Everyone else, or at least most everyone else, were severely scarred due to the experiences making it. Most quit after reading the script, but others were in desperate need of a job, whether they were animators or new executives. A whole 4th season was written, but completely scrapped and abandoned after the first screening, with the final blow being that the scripts were destroyed in what was once PBS Studios HQ after an arsonist, who is now believed to be the writer and director of the episodes, obliterated the building. The few who read the scripts claimed to say that they were either too gory to air or too unnerving for children to enjoy watching. These people wish to remain anonymous and even remain scarce to this day. The first episode wasn't even ready to air before the content spiraled horrifically out of control and terrified test audiences. Originally planned by PBS, it was designed by Mantella Animation Studio in Russia, and thus the original pilot episode was partly animated in Russia before the first screening. In the original pilot episode, the doubting school children were brought into a school bus that transformed into a spacecraft and brought them into space where strange things began to happen. That was the only description the people attending the screening had, so they had no real expectations for it. After the screening, however, PBS took the original idea back to the storyboards, fired everyone behind the pilot's production, remade the show, hired new writers, and turned it into, obviously, The Magic School Bus. The episode was sent to me in a cardboard box by one of my online friends, who simply gave me his first name, Sogel. So Gale was one of the employees during the late 80s and into the later half of the 90s. His job was merely just checking to make sure the VHS copies of the animations weren't destroyed or any lesser quality than a first generation VHS tape. He never told me this until I experienced its entry in his old job, which triggered him to spill everything. He was much older than me, at 43 years old. The method that he used to have obtained the episode was simply sneaking into Mandela Animation Studios, which is now merely a shoe-making factory, and breaking through the safe in what was then where the animation was produced, which was untouched. Though most of the old animations designed by the studio were there. The episode was hard to find, but due to him having seen the original copy when it was sent to him, could identify it. And as such, the episode starts out like the normal episode that we got. The recut includes the original PBS episode 1, but the music is different, with an infinitely depressing separate story replacing the happy intro. The title screen is Myuu back, with Russian words appearing over the screen, with what must be English subtitles that said, "The Sad Bus." After some research, I found out that it actually said, "I cannot breathe," which makes a little bit of sense considering it takes place in outer space. Of course, according to Sir Gale, the version I had was a recut. According to Sir Gale, despite the fact it was the original tape, apparently after the negative reaction that it got, the writer for Horrors Awry and director of this specific episode, so in desperation, took the tape and attempted to edit out anything deemed unsavory, but quit after 3 scenes. I'm guessing that the recut didn't include the bus's eyes, but I'm not sure whether it was a layering mistake or it was just a weird design choice. Or maybe something much more sinister due to the fact that 2 of the student characters, Carlos and Dorothy, had no eyes. I mean, they were there, but their eyes were missing, and no one mentions it. The bus looks much more sad, though, because the front lights are normal at first glance, though still eye-like, almost like a human's eyes while literally frozen, and the grill of the bus just looks extremely sad, like it's in a constant frown. The voice work is also different, with a sense of sorrow and blatant discomfort in the American actors' voices. In the final cut of this episode, Arnold's cousin, Janet, thinks that Miss Frizzle is boring, so Arnold has the teacher take them to space. In the original pilot episode, going into space is where things become very messed up. Nothing from the final cut is here. Instead, the bus transforms into a spaceship, kind of like the one you see in a film like 2001: A Space Odyssey. There's no transition, it just becomes this. The walls are all white and there seem to be infinite corridors with steep drops. From the outside, it looked like a Soviet space rocket, which makes sense due to this being animated in Russia, but much more larger. Arnold comments that this wasn't what he was expecting and he wants to go home. Janet and Carlos also seem equally confused, but Janet is smiling. Miss Frizzle says that there is an override lock on the ship and nobody can leave until it reaches its destination. "We're heading towards the sun," she says. Miss Frizzle then tells everyone that she can turn off the airlock and suffocate anyone, only jokingly, before saying that she will put it in manual overdrive, but it would take 6 months to reach Earth. After this, the screen begins distorting as the picture goes out of focus in a similar fashion to how the Max Headroom engine hijacked went into transmission during Doctor Who. An out-of-place slideshow then played over what sounded like an acoustic version of the Star Wars theme. The only pictures that were shown are that of planets, with each picture having some subliminally hidden disturbing human elements across the planet being shown. Basically, imagine the planet Jupiter having angry-looking human eyes melted into it. Realistically, but not something too out of the ordinary for a skilled philosopher user to have created. Miss Frizzle then suggests that everyone go into stasis sleep, with a cancerous sore that developed on her face out of nowhere that nobody mentions. However, Miss Frizzle then mentions that there are only 9 stasis beds, and there are 11 people, including herself. She told them that they'll be fine staying up for 6 months, but one of the students will have to stay up as well. Ralphie suggests that they draw straws. They do so when Arnold is determined to be the one who has to stay up. Now, to this point, the episode was baffling strange, but this is where the show descends into realms that I couldn't even make up even if I tried. After everyone goes into stasis sleep, Miss Frizzle then tells Arnold that originally there are 30 students in the class, but 20 of them died. She then tells Arnold that she is going into the upper area where there is a separate bed, and that she only told the students that there were less beds because she didn't want them to face the idea that one person would have to be alone for 6 months. In addition to this, the time frame for returning home was actually 2 years. Miss Frizzle leaves and locks the door behind her from the outside. After this scene, the same distortion effect occurs, as a long screen of text appears saying, "But what about Janet?" several times. You could tell that time was passing by only because Arnold became more dirty as time passed. The 9 beds lined the walls, and there were porthole windows among with a control panel that was deactivated. The food that was left for Arnold sits in one corner of the room. He tries to ration it, but it only lasted him 1 month. Arnold also had no means to the bathroom, so he urinates and defecates on the floor. After about 2 minutes, 2 months have passed, and Arnold is looking noticeably more nervous and disheveled, yet still hopeful. He was extremely humming, more so than he has ever been. Ralphie's catchphrase, "I think I'm going to be sick," begins to play repeatedly over and over again over the music track. I think it was meant to reflect Arnold's mind. But then, out of nowhere, Miss Frizzle's disembodied voice begins to talk. "You're hungry, aren't you?" Arnold now realizes the predicament he faces. He won't survive here in 2 years in this environment. If he tries to kill himself by smashing a porthole window, he'll kill his other students too. "You didn't leave me enough food!" he screams, his voice beginning to crack against the pressure. Several quick cuts of the spaces from 2001: A Space Odyssey began to play about as fast as the human eye can blink. The voice begins to go darker and more tense like a demon. "Oh, Arnold, but I did!" The animation does a long, slow pan across the room with what looks like a stylization of a wide-angle lens pointing out the beds. Then Miss Frizzle's voice comes back. "I am your extracellular nervous system, Arnold. This is no hallucination. Arnold, I am you." The weirdest and most convincing thing about the animation of the original episode is that Arnold looks very similar to Miss Frizzle. One would think they are related. They both have pale skin, orange hair, and represent nerds, even though mannerisms, aside from Miss Frizzle's greater achieved sense of confidence, are similar. Miss Frizzle's voice then became nothing but a whisper. "Eat them." A image of Miss Frizzle slowly melts into the background as Arnold's body slowly begins to simmer, while seemingly grow additional scars across his body. Arnold had attempted to analyze the space art on the defunct troll parent for some time now, but only now realizing that he was initially trapped here. But it didn't make sense. The path wasn't leading to Earth. It was leading for a malformed black hole that had strangely appeared to the left of the moon. Through whatever means, the moon was also becoming increasingly hot, so much so that Arnold had to take off all but his underwear. The unclean environment was forcing him to develop more scars and sores as he slept on his side in a mat before ritualistically taking Carlos from the bed so he could sleep there at night. That's when he made the horrible realization that none of them were breathing. Miss Frizzle hadn't put them into stasis, she euthanized them. It was only after he had made the realization that a scalpel appeared near the door. Someone had opened it while he was sleeping and moved the bodies around. The words "Bullshit See Hope" was scrawled in English on the wall in marker. The increasing need to eat was more apparent now than ever. Arnold looked at Theodore. She secretly loathed her. This became all more apparent as he took the scalpel and suddenly cut into her belly. He was not at all hesitant now. This scene was the most disturbing because the angle never changes. His expression is always angry, with cartoon stylized eyebrows. For an entire 60 seconds, he slices her open, eats her lungs and intestines, peels and eats her skin, then moves on to the face, slicing off eyebrows and the nose, leaving a safe skeletal corpse as the camera time-lapses. The animation is different here. It's more simplistic, more layered, and more medical looking. Now the cancer sores were visibly on Arnold's face as well. The next day, the scalpel is removed. For the next month or so, he picks on the remains of Theodore. The next time lapse seems to be more messed up because now Arnold seems to have begun to hit puberty. He had nibbles on the ears and fingers of every student except Janet because it's his cousin. The scalpel appears again, this time with the words "A mortal scorn" written on the wall. Arnold talks to himself rapidly. What does that mean? What does that mean? He picks up the scalpel again and decides who to use next. He never liked Carlos either. As he undresses Carlos and begins to slice into him, the student ID falls out of his pocket. He reads it read, Carlos Ramon. A mortal scorn. Carlos Ramon. It was an anagram, just like Bosie C. Hope was an anagram for Dearford Trissy's name. By now, the episode is almost over, and the screen begins to flicker as Arnold starts to gasp for help. You knew. Arnold begins to cry. The animation gets very toppy at this point. Two different shots are seen. One, the school bus collides with the sun. In the other, Arnold continues to eat the remaining students, in the order based on the anagram instructions. Since it's a time lapse, you only see the bones pile up. He refuses to eat Janet, his cousin, before ultimately slicing his neck open with the scalpel and killing himself. The cancerous sores envelop his corpse. Another scene was supposed to appear, but it appeared to be cut. The final shot before it ends is the words, "You're gonna go bonkers in 1988. That phrase, to my knowledge, means nothing. The retrograde film begins to deteriorate before the Russian words appear. It directly translates to, "Whatever happened to Janet?" There was nothing else. The ship enters a black hole and there are no credits, and Arnold profusely screamed for 3 minutes that he couldn't breathe as a boniness began to envelope the back layer track. It goes on for a full 3 minutes. I tried figuring out what happened to Janet, but the only real clue is, I suppose, in the animation itself. I tried finding some information about the origins online, but I somewhat succeeded in doing. I only found out about it through articles about it on the deep web and a very old post on 4chan with 2 replies which explained skepticism due to the lack of evidence. I didn't want to upload the footage onto YouTube or Vimeo or Dailymotion because the gore and disturbing imagery was obviously going to get me flagged or banned on any of those sites. So Gail stopped mentioning me everywhere I have him as a friend. I ultimately put the VHS tape up on eBay before being hit with a $600,000 notice from the PBS company. I got sent a very friendly email that told me my life as a professional contractor and plumber was basically over if I ever released that VHS to the general public. They insisted it was merely a prank regarding some of the employees working on the Smash Screw Buns, so having fun. But I knew that the backstories, the voice actor's sorrow, the words and text, the attention to detail, the matching details regarding the backstories and the actual tape was too much evidence to believe this lie. I told them that I had destroyed the tape to cease the harassing for cause, as evidently my profession had ruffled the feathers of some of the higher-ups. They weren't clear what would happen if I had continued, besides that they would simply ruin my life layer by layer. I still have the VHS tape though. It's in my garage with my old college stuff. It sat there for days. Days would turn to weeks. Weeks would turn to months. And months will then turn to years. And the tape will still be there. They have to pry it from my cold, dead fucking hands. But there's only one more question that remains on my mind. What happened to Sogel?